Now, I don't accept for 1 second that the federal government finds it necessary to attach a jail term onto their recent ban on Australians returning home from India. Not for 1 second. In fact, the whole idea of not allowing at least a small number of Australians to get home from India each week and trust our hotel quarantine processes is far from satisfactory. Some people would say it stinks. What, the situation and the virus variant in India is worse than what we saw in the UK at one stage? No, it's not. No, it's not. On a number of statistical and medical measures, it is not. But for the time being, to reset how we should treat Australians in India from May the 15th, we probably need to give the Commonwealth medical team the benefit of the doubt. But a jail term for Australians who breached the ruling, I'm sorry, it is gross, it is unnecessary, and it's very un-Australian. Even a Liberal senator wasn't comfortable with that punishment last night.
Look, I think a lot of people are a little bit uncomfortable with this. It's not something that I think many people would have thought we would ever do, is put Australian citizens at risk of a criminal charge for returning home. If there needs to be a pausing of the situation to make sure that those states are capable of quarantining, then maybe that's just where the breather needs to come in. But I do think that we will need to review any criminal charges on Australians trying to come home.
Now, bear in mind, to flout the rules, you'd need to go to a transit country from, say, New Delhi, probably falsify quarantine documents to fly immediately and spend another $3,000 on quarantine here, spending close to $25,000 to get home. Now, it's okay for top-line cricketers. They've got the money, but not the vast majority of Australians in India. And if a few could breach the rules, what's wrong with a $10,000 fine or a $20,000 fine? There is a $60,000 fine attached to this rule, by the way, but it is harsh symbolism, a jail term, that needs to be scrapped urgently. It is a terrible look for the Morrison government. So who came up with the penalty? Well, yesterday, the Foreign Minister, Marise, she tended to pass the buck to the Chief Medical Officer.
The decision, which has been made under the Biosecurity Act on the basis of the advice from the Chief Medical Officer, is a temporary pause on returns and is entirely founded in the advice of the Chief Medical Officer. That's what invokes the operation of the Biosecurity Act.
Advice on the penalty comes from the Chief Medical Officer? Maybe not. It certainly wasn't the way the Chief Medical Officer saw it today.
The advice we provided was what we were asked for, which was related to that particular section of the Act, which was what is the public health threat, what is the nature of that public health threat, what sort of time would need to decrease that threat, and also what sort of things could be done to decrease that threat. And another section of the Act is about the penalties. So we weren't asked about penalties. That's the law.
So, yes, the Health Boffin called for a ban, a reset, before they could draw up plans for a safe repatriation of Australians from India. But the jail term, not from the medics. Now, after that conflict was established today, the Financial Services Minister, Jane Hume, came up with this answer.
The CMO did not recommend jail time or $60,000 penalties. That was a decision by government, was it not?
No, he did not. No, that's a function of the Biosecurity Act, which is what was invoked by the Chief Medical Officer's advice. This is not what anybody wants.
Are you confused yet? Well, biosecurity is in the hands of the Health Minister and the Agriculture Minister. Now, it's hardly a rural issue, and if Greg Hunt is acting only on medical advice, it's back to Professor Kelly, who says it wasn't him. So this afternoon, we were given the accurate answer by Greg Hunt. The penalties are part of a raft of biosecurity measures made available for implementation last year by both the Chief Medical Officer and the Minister. Now, parts of those measures, including penalties, are automatically installed and available once the ban on travel from India came into force today.
One of the things here is that we have been very measured. There are many orders which have been put in place, in particular under the Biosecurity Act. Nobody has been prosecuted in Australia, to the best of my knowledge. The original remote communities protection orders were made under the Biosecurity Act. The Biosecurity Act was invoked on the 18th of March 2020, and this section has been in action since that time. The Remote Communities Protection ruling, which was put in place, that's now been rescinded, thankfully, given the state domestically across Australia.
So it is part of the Biosecurity Act. But irrespective of how this threat of 5 years in jail came into being, it is a wretched thing to hang over the heads of Australians. These are not dual citizens either, and I've noticed a lot of people commenting on the fact that they may be. India does not allow dual citizenship. The Biosecurity Act leading to prison for Australians has got to be ditched. And it appears the Prime Minister began reading the room today and may backflip on this ruling sooner than expected. Of course, that's not how Scott Morrison described it.
Yeah, that's the case, and Ray, I mean, and I can and will be reviewing it before then too, with Greg Hunt and the Chief Medical Officer, and we will continue to do that. We'll do it, this week. We'll do it the following week. This only needs to be there in place for as long as it needs to be there to keep Australians safe.
But it is worth pointing out, it does appear that most Australians are satisfied with the way the government is handling the COVID wave in India. A Lowy Institute survey released this afternoon found that 2/3 are happy with a ban on Australians returning from India. But the decision clearly discriminates between Australians of Indian heritage because we didn't stop Australians returning from the UK when their death rate peaked above last week's numbers from India. There is no reason why we can't place a small cap on the number of Australians returning from India and rely on what has been a successful safety net this year, hotel quarantine. We've had minor leakages. Minor leakages have been quickly cleaned up, and the same can occur after May 15. The decision needs to be made by the Prime Minister and not the National Cabinet, which is made up of risk-averse leaders who only know one way of dealing with COVID-19, which is to shut borders. We're better than that, and we're good at it. Well, while we wait for the government to come to their senses and amend the Biosecurity Act for Australians, the fact is, as of today, any Australian caught flying into the country from India could go to jail. Some are calling the new restriction racist, as thousands of Australians find themselves stranded and trapped. Australian permanent resident Ria Wadwani and her family moved back to India 2 years ago to help care for her ill father-in-law. The family of 3 are due to fly back in July, but she's now fearing the worst as India's COVID catastrophe continues to deepen. She joins us now live from Pune, India. Ria, thank you very much for your time.
Hi, Chris.
Hi there. We've seen and heard some horrific stories and images coming out of where you are. How would you describe the COVID crisis there at the moment?
If I say it's bad right now, it would be an understatement, to be quite honest. People are dying. People are not getting hospital beds. There's a lot of issues with oxygens in the hospitals, and that is probably, I think, the highest reason why people are dying. The only good thing that is coming out of this is that the government has opened vaccinations for 18 plus now, which is kind of still a struggle because they are waiting to get the vaccinations in stock, and the appointments need to open up. So that's kind of like a ray of hope that we have at the moment, but the situation outside is not good. So
okay, you must be concerned as well. You must be concerned about flying back into Brisbane in a few months and whether you'll be able to do so.
Of course. I mean, up until I think March, I was very confident. I was like, okay, I booked my tickets. I'll be back in July. But the news that's coming in, then COVID cases rising, and then Australia as a country taking a decision to ban its citizens and residents to come back into the country, it's just so disappointing. I mean, no other country I know has done that. So it's something that I'm very, very disappointed with. And it's not just me. I mean, I'm still like at least 2 months away from my flight. But people who have had their flights cancelled time and again, they were already limited flights. They were already limited seats. And those seats have been purchased at up of $3,000 per way per ticket. even for a child. So that is not a joke for a family to spend that kind of money to come back to their own country. It's unbelievable. If I say everybody's disappointed, that would be like a massive understatement.
So you've been in contact with other Australians in India and they have reacted the same?
Yes. I mean, it's like I said, it's just disappointment would be a very, very understatement. Like, I mean, I talk to so many people on a daily basis in worse situations that I am. I mean, I am still, I would say, lucky enough to be stuck, but stuck with my family because my husband and my son are still here with me. I know people who have been separated with their partners for over a year, with their kids for over a year. I mean, I have promised one of my ex-colleagues that I was working with to bring her daughter back because her daughter is stuck in India for the last year and a half. So even that is now at stake. And she's been away from her daughter for year and a half? And it's just so disappointing. I mean, what do we do now?
I understand you're also trying to come back in July with a 3-year-old Australian girl who's actually stranded there. The 3-year-old doesn't have her parents. Why is that? Can you explain that situation to us?
So his mother was very, very ill. Unfortunately, she didn't recover. And when he was here, to take care of his mother, he had got her daughter here and he sent the daughter to his in-laws. And when India shut its borders, it was basically impossible to cross any city border. And she was in a different city than him. So he couldn't even go back to get her to take her back to Australia. And that just, he thought, okay, in a couple of months, the parents can bring the daughter once the cases come under control. But that just did not happen. They have tried for exemptions for their parents to bring the daughter home, but even that has failed. So that's why they reached out to me, and I was very happy to do that. But like I said, unfortunately now I'm not sure if it's going to happen or not, or if it's going to be pushed even further.
It's one thing to place a ban on Australians coming to Australia, which is probably the first time it's ever happened in the history of the country. It's another thing to have a Biosecurity Act that will encompass those same Australians with the threat of a jail term of 5 years. That, to me, is the most hideous thing. What's your view?
It's just unbelievable. I mean, when all of us here heard that news coming in, and that to an act which just literally passed overnight, it was just unbearable, and it is just extremely, extremely disheartening for everybody who's trying to go home. I mean, I have heard people say, you know what, give me the fine, put me in jail, at least my family will be able to meet me. I mean, look at us here. We are not able to see our loved ones, and it's been people who've been, the families who've been separated, they have not seen each other for a good year and a half. It's a joke. I mean, that is something that was so extreme. I didn't hear that when flights from the United States were coming in, when they were touching 300,000 cases. I never heard that when UK strain, which is 70% more contagious.
Yep.
And that has actually caused a bigger issue in India, because of which we have so many cases now. Never heard a flight ban from there. And if you compare the population, India is a country of 1.3 billion people with 300,000 cases. US is a population of 330 million people with a 300,000 cases.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do the math. It's just, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, the point you're trying to make here, let's state it very clearly. The point you're trying to make is, per capita, the situation that Australia faced with people coming from the UK, but in particular the US, was worse than the per capita problem now faced in India.
Yeah, it's like, I couldn't say it better. I mean, what you've said is absolutely bang on. I mean, if the government can't do that basic of a calculation, they can't organize flights. And we were so happy when we saw there were like 8 flights arranged for Indians to go back to Australia via Qantas, and 6 from Delhi, 3 from Chennai, or 2 from Chennai. And all of this, suddenly everything got cancelled. So people who have a grim hope of going back, now even that is gone. No transit route, no direct flight, zero.
Yep.
I mean, everybody's stuck. What to do?
Yep. We'll keep in touch. We want to make sure that you're safe and the family as well. Thank you very much for giving us the time.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much.
Okay.